Good evening, members, officers, members of the public watching. Welcome along to our Cabinet meeting this evening. We have 16 items on our agenda for tonight, and we will begin with agenda item 1, which are apologies for absence.
Councillors Ferguson and Brown.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do I have any declarations from members? Councillor Smith.
Essex County Council.
Councillor McGarren, same. Yeah, I'll take the two hatters on block. Any other declarations from anybody? No? Okay, thank you. In which case, agenda item 3 are the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 11th of November. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? In which case, can I have a show of hands that they are a true record? All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Agenda item 4 are the CMDRs. Since our last meeting, there is only one CMDR since that meeting from myself in terms of the reappointment of the Lane and Common Conservators. Is there any comments or questions on the CMDRs? No, in which case they are duly noted. Agenda item 5 are Cabinet member updates. Do we have any Cabinet members wishing to make any updates this evening? No? Okay, we will cover it in the reports. Well, this is good. We're already halfway through. Nearly. Councillor McGarry.
So, yeah, just like to point out that obviously it's a very important season for the retail industry, and just to announce that our car parks will remain free for the Christmas period in order to give our retailers a valuable boost.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor McGarren. Agenda item 6 then is the Westgate Master Plan update. This is on pages 23 to 30 of the agenda. This one is me. As members will be aware, I did commit when we both purchased the Westgate, but then also appointed our master planners that we would aim to come back to the committee before Christmas to provide an update of where we are. The focus for what we are seeking to do is to create employment growth, to create some housing, to create some retail mix, and to increase the footfall in the west end of the town. Our architects were appointed by Cabinet back in September to develop the master plan and phase 1 designs, which they are undertaking at the moment. A detailed planning application for that phase 1 is scheduled for submission in the spring of 2025. And more broadly, we have some principles that the master plan is working on at the moment. They are looking at a welcoming gateway, which is aimed at enhancing access and the entrances to our town centre, and that will include mixed-use spaces and an improvement in the public realm. We're looking at expanding culture and leisure activities, looking at how we can strengthen the links to Gloucester Park and the green spaces, active travel as well in our town centre, as well as new housing as well. So the master plan team who helped us with a visioning exercise a couple of weeks ago in the town centre, which was a really, really good exercise where they brought together people from all across the industry to look at what we need in our town centre in terms of attracting investment, attracting commitment from businesses, which was a really, really worthwhile exercise. They are looking at submitting their detailed planning application in the early part of 2025. So the good news is that the timetable that we set as a cabinet is being met and being worked to, and the public can have confidence that we are going to be bringing forward proposals in the new year that they hopefully will be able to support and to get behind. At this point, I'm going to stop there. Ms Lyons, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you covered everything in the report.
Good. In which case, members, open to you. Does any member wish to comment on the Westgate report? Does the Leader of the Opposition have any questions on the Westgate report? No. Everybody is happy with the Westgate report and for us to proceed with the recommendations that are on page 24. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 7 is the report from me looking at the the proposed changes to the council tax premiums. And the council has the powers now to look at introducing a second home premium, which is 100% council tax premium for second homes that are unoccupied but furnished. This is not anything to do with landlords, just to be really clear. This is people who own second homes and they have that second home in our borough. And it's also about trying to encourage the long-term empty properties to come back into use as well. So we're looking at applying a premium to those long-term empty properties that have been empty for 1 year instead of the current 2. To give some colour to that, just on the additional income from the second homes premium, the council forecasts that will raise an additional £363,000 a year, of which 51,000 will stay in Basildon, the rest will be robbed by the county council, and there will be some additional money for the police. And then in terms of the additional income from the long-term empty properties premium, that will also generate an additional £311,000 of council tax, of which 44,000 will remain in Basildon. So these changes generate around £95,000 of additional income for Basildon Council, as well as hopefully helping us to reduce the number of empty homes, helping with things like antisocial behaviour, squatting, that kind of stuff in some of these homes, helping them get back into use, and also a fairer taxation model for people who can afford it as well. So at this point, Mr. Sparks, Mr. Wilson, have I missed anything? Everyone's happy? Good. Cabinet, does anyone wish to come in and speak on this point? Councillor Yacoub.
I'll be Councillor Smith for the day.
That's a great thing.
Just to say that I'm really supportive of this policy. I don't know why we haven't done this before. I think it's really important, especially when we have a housing crisis where we have people who don't currently have homes. I think it's really important that we are able to raise income in whichever way we see fit when people have second homes. The income that we're looking at, getting £51,000 from second homes and then £44,000 from long-term empty properties, is significant, and we know that it could be a lot more if it wasn't for the fact that we've got to send the rest of it to Essex County Council. And I think it's also really important because it acts as a deterrent. We want to discourage people from having second homes that are left empty on a long-term basis, and we did look at this actually last year as well in a piece of work where there was a report that was brought to Cabinet where we saw that people having second homes and the list of empty properties across the borough were increasing. So I think it's so important that we're doing something about this.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. The real Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be supporting this. There's not much to disagree with. But one thing I think would be helpful from yourself as leader would be to the right to the probate department, because they're not the fastest. If you have a simple will, it can be all dealt with in 6 months. But unfortunately, everyone else has gone back to work. But well, I shouldn't badmouth Her Majesty Revenue and Customs. They might do a special on me or anyone here. But until they've done everything with inheritance, then the probate can work. And if there's a little discrepancy, it can drag it out. So I think of a letter from yourself, leader, to make probate aware that themselves and the HMRC have a year when someone tragically passes away. So those homes that have come under that category, they're not unfairly penalised, but the council shouldn't be left out of pocket because those two government departments are very fast at times getting these tragic things dealt with.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's a good point that you raise. I know that within our revenues and benefits team, since the summer, we have taken on board an empty homes officer in Rob Mance's team that have been looking specifically at those empty properties, and probate is obviously one of those issues that they are dealing with. So that is something that's already on the Revs and Bens team's radar that they're working on, but it is a point well raised. Any other Cabinet member on this report? Leader of the Opposition? Councillor Baggott?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, two things. One, just to pick up on Councillor Smith's point, I wouldn't bother writing to the probate department because there's no such thing as a probate department. Every area has its own probate department, and when you have somebody that dies, you can choose which probate department you go to get probate. So, for instance, somebody here could actually go to Swansea if they're people that died here, if they felt that the Swansea department was going to be out quicker. So you'd really need to find a body that's above the probate department to actually have a look at that. I get the point, but there isn't a single department that necessarily deals with Basildon. The only thing that's missing from this report, because this was looked at last year, is what the financial cost is likely to be as a resource to actually identify the properties and to collect any monies compared to how many properties there actually are. Because certainly when it was looked at by officers previously, the data that they had was that there's not that many people buying holiday homes or second homes in Basildon, and therefore the resource for actually getting the money in was probably going to outweigh any money that came in. So it would be interesting if there was financial data here so that we could see that and obviously prove that to be incorrect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. I think perhaps in relation to the first point, there might be something that we can do in terms of the Ministry of Justice, writing to the Ministry of Justice and allowing the Minister to be aware of the nuance that Councillor Smith has raised. In terms of the finances, I mean, they are all across page 32 and 33 and 34 of the report. And as I mentioned earlier on, we have, as a council, employed an empty homes officer to do this work and to be working on the specifics. So we've identified the number of homes that fall into this category in the same way we've identified the number of homes that are sitting empty at the moment. It's not a small number of homes. There are a large number of homes in our borough that have been sat empty for more than a year. So hopefully, again, this will entice people to bring those homes back into use. And I think one of the things that our empty homes officer has relayed to me is that a lot of the landlords, that when you speak to them, would be quite happy to, a lot of the owners of those empty properties would be quite happy to bring them into use, to allow them to be used either by the council or by private tenants, but they perhaps have no idea how to go about setting themselves up, how to make that work. And that's something that the council is actively engaging with them on now and trying to find a way of marketing how easy it could be for them to bring those homes back into use. So as I say, it's not an insignificant number, particularly in the context of the temporary accommodation crisis we have and all the rest of it. So the work that Rob Mansell's team are doing on this already within the existing resource and envelope of the corporate resources team, I think Mr. Sparks might differ, but I'm not unduly worried that there is any additional resource required to be able to carry on doing the work that we've already done so far this year. I'm going to move to the recommendations on this report. They are on page 32. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Agenda item 8, which is the financial performance of the council, which is me. This is the quarter 2 financial performance up to the 30th of September. I wish it made for better reading. The council remains in a difficult position because of the decision of the previous administration to introduce a waste service that doesn't work and is now currently overspending by £2.5 million. In total, the council is projected to have an overspend of almost £3 million this year. That is up from the 1.6 million in quarter 1, and that, as I say, is driven by 2.5 million of that being an overspend in the refuse and recycling costs, and that is due to additional vehicle hires, staffing costs, and fuel prices. So all of those things that we knew back in quarter 1 are still the case in quarter 2. We have an overspend in terms of the delayed efficiencies and savings in some of the IT, and that's because of a one-off, half of that is due to a one-off spend in one area. That should even itself out as we get towards the end of the financial year. We are, and we can go into detail on this, we are also projected to have a £1.5 million overspend in the HRA budget this year as well, and that is driven by a combination of things in terms of repairs, but also those legal claims that we talked about previously as well. So, the council was already projected to have a £1.7 million budget gap. That is becoming more and more difficult. We will consider at the next meeting of the Cabinet in January the budget, aiming to then set the budget in February the 13th at full council, and we will go into more details about our plan in order to close the gap there. But this report this evening for members is now open for debate. I will start with the Cabinet. Does any member of the Cabinet wish to come in? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From my perspective as the person with the brief for housing, I'm not here to point fingers at people in the past. They've done what they are capable of doing, and that has left us in this situation. We now have a better relationship with Morgan Sindall, cracking the whip with them. When I last spoke to them a few weeks ago, they said there was 4,500 outstanding repairs when I took over. It's now back down to the target of 2,500 a month, and how that target is calculated, each week 700 new repairs are reported on average each week, hence why you get the 2,500 figure thereabouts. So we're getting that, so that's now licked into shape. We're dealing with this repair. I think everyone will appreciate, if I could put all our cards on the table, these pound shop ambulance chasing solicitors ripping the rent payer off, not only with their rents, but the crumbs they give back after a successful claim. We've got some good people there, it's getting dealt with. And the final point is, as people here will regularly know, we are taking the battle on to acquire temporary accommodation stock. We agreed with the cabinet meeting, so we have plans in place. But if we've done nothing about the housing alone, this would be the hole in the side of the ship that would sink this council, and we are dealing with it. But I think people will appreciate it's not a case of going down to B&Q's, buying a tin of paint and ladders and just jumping up on someone's roof. These things take time, and all of our housing stock is slightly different, and we'll have different problems. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any other member on this report? Leader of the Opposition? Councillor Barrett?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I know this is a bit of a smoke and mirrors administration, which likes to actually actually spread rumours about budget overspends and everything else, when in fact they're not necessarily there. But the reality is here that this is the second quarter report. This is a report which therefore falls completely within your administration. And in the second quarter, you're admitting that you have increased any budget overspend by a further 1.2 million, which is nigh on 80% increase. And you've now managed to get an overspend within the HRA account as well of 1.5 million. So when you actually sit there and start talking about our previous administration and any overspend and budget deficits and budget gaps, take responsibility now for the fact that you are increasing the spending. You are increasing the overall budget deficit yourself through the actions that you've been taking over the last 6 months.
Okay. Before I bring Councillor McGovern in, let us deal with some facts. So, let's start with the HRA. The contract management with Morgan Sindall was abysmal. So the officers who were in charge of running that contract allowed Morgan Sindall to fall well below par when it comes to their performance. Okay? And so what did Councillor Schrader do in that scenario when he was the housing portfolio holder? Nothing. In the same way that when temporary accommodation was allowed to spiral for 3 years, what did Councillor Schrader do? Nothing. Not one single property purchased throughout his 3 years in charge of housing when this was allowed to spiral. Morgan Sindall, where was the performance improvement plan? So as soon as this administration took over, we introduced a performance improvement plan with Morgan Sindall. Councillor Smith has just given us details of what is happening when it comes to bringing those repairs and those claims down. It is going to take more than 4.5, 5 months in order to do that. The second thing is you can't have it both ways. You say this is a smoke and mirrors administration. Well, the opposition is certainly a cake and eat it opposition, right? Because you can't on the one hand say that we as an administration haven't introduced the changes to the waste service that we said we were going to introduce. We haven't gone back immediately to weekly black sack collections. We haven't scrapped the horrendous recycling bags that you brought in. So you can't on the one hand say, well, you've done nothing in 6 months, but then on the other hand say, we've caused the financial gap of £2.5 million. That the reason you are sat there as the leader of the opposition is because you introduced a bin system that ends up costing more money but delivers less of a service. You said that this system was going to save £2 million and it is £2.5 million overspent. It's your system. To date, we haven't changed it. It's exactly the same thing that you did. We are about, you will be pleased to know, talk about quick action. Literally, the next item on the agenda is us talking about the changes that we are going to make to your system because we cannot continue to afford to be £2.5 million overspent. I don't understand. If I was in your position, and far be it from me to give the opposition any kind of advice, but if I was in your position, I would be coming here with so much contrition, and I would be apologising for introducing a system that everybody knows is rubbish, literally. It doesn't work. It's a nightmare for the refuse guys to have to deliver. And it is now costing the taxpayer £2.5 million more than when you stood up in this council chamber at the budget, you said it was going to cost £2.5 million less than it currently does. So you can blame this administration for trying to get to grips with the crisis, and I've just said we are bringing forward a budget at the next meeting. We will balance the budget, but the other thing we need to factor into all of this is over the last 3 years, how many reserves did you burn through? The answer is millions. Millions of pounds of this council's reserves were burnt through. He's shaking his head. I've been looking at all of the figures. Over £5 million of reserves were burnt through under your watch. And so you haven't actually taken any concrete decisions to fix the foundations of the budget in this council. So we have been left with a cliff edge where it's 1.7 million now, but it's rising to 5 million in 2 years' time. It's rising to 11 million in 3 years' time. And that's because you keep, if you had carried on burning through the reserves at the pace that you are, you would be on course to do a Thurrock. That's what Thurrock did, that's what Surrey did, that's what all of those councils that got themselves into difficulty did. They kept burning through reserves, not making the structural changes that needed to be made. When you did, in fairness, you made the wrong one, the waste change, which turns out to now be a £2.5 million more expensive service to run. So I say with the greatest of respect, I can listen to you on some things, but when it comes to finances and money, you are on the shakiest ground imaginable. And as you have said rightly, it is here in black and white that this is your legacy. It is an almost £3 million overspend that we are now having to fix as well. Councillor McGowan.
Thank you. There's a clear theme emerging here, and I think it's emanating from Conservative Central Office, because I've got the privilege as Councillor Smith of attending a full council, Essex County Council full council meeting tomorrow, and there's two motions there that are so laughable, it's unbelievable. But the theme is blame Labour for everything. They've been in 5 months, but blame them for everything. You know, the 14 years before, apparently, didn't happen. Well, not a lot happened, but, you know, I think you need to take some responsibility. Liz Truss mini-budget springs to mind. You know, you're going on about debt and inflation. I think that had something to do with it. But, you know, again, as the leader has said, it's in black and white. It's inarguable. You brought in a waste system that was supposed to deliver a saving of £2 million, and it's costing. It's not delivering a saving, it's costing. And there's two, you know, again, as been said, sorry to repeat it, there's two big factors going on here that is causing the budgetary pressures that we're experiencing. Temporary accommodation, which you did nothing about because you didn't know what to do about it and probably thought that maybe people might not like the sort of bold measures that we've taken, particularly in places like Billericay. And you know what? If you don't like it, tough, because we need to sort the problem out. And the other issue was the waste, which you did something about, and you screwed it up. The system's rubbish. It doesn't work, and the reason you're sat there and not here is because of that. It's almost entirely because of that. And like I say, I'm with the leader. I don't want to advise you, but I feel almost honour bound to advise you in that stop going on about it. It's not going to help you. It's really not going to help you. Admit you got it wrong. Show a bit of humanity and contrition, and maybe actually hang Councillor Blake out to dry a little bit if you want. Because I tell you what, he's achieved something. He has achieved something because not many councillors have real name recognition. Now, Councillor Blake undoubtedly has that. Unfortunately, not in a positive way, and I'm being very polite. And actually, to be fair, some of the stuff on social media is personal and unpleasant, and I don't subscribe to it. I don't mind a Greg's either. But, the fact is, he messed up the system. People know he messed up the system. Just admit it. But don't start saying, after 7 months, 2 months of which we were in Purdah anyway and couldn't do much, that it's all our fault. It's not. People aren't that stupid. They know whose fault it is, and the figures are all in here. And it's basically two things that you messed up. One through inertia, and one because you made terrible, terrible decisions, which is why you sat there.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to come back to a comment made by the Leader of the Opposition. I shan't bash him up about the bins because it's hard to follow Councillor McGarren's point. But I'm not going to go into details of how we're doing it. Disrepair claims don't come up overnight. As I say, I won't be saying the mechanisms we're dealing with it, but before I took this place as back in charge of housing, we were rolling over and playing dead to disrepair claims. Go on, Mr. Solicitor, don't chase the ambulance, tickle our tummy, we're paying. Well, I told them, take a leaflet of Trump's old solicitor, fight them, challenge them, let them fight for their pennies. And that's what we're doing. They're not getting the roll over belly, they're getting the fangs, they're getting the teeth, they're getting the claws. They're coming after us for money, we're going to go for it. And within one final point on this, within the communal blocks in our flats, there are leaflets for disrepair solicitors. I have told our estate teams when Pinnacle goes around each week, that notice board that's meant to update residents is not a free advertising spot for these disrepair merchants. If there's a leaflet, you pull it off. I don't want to see any in any council blocks, and our staff have responded. Now, them two simple measures alone, why were they not done the previous 3 years? Why did we roll over? Why did we give them free advertising? This is where it's still hurting us. And that's why when the Tories took over last time, they couldn't complain about our record. They was left something ship-shape, and we've been left a joy-ridden car.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And I'll just conclude on this point, which is to say that the report in front of us tonight tells us that we are currently overspending by 10% of our revenue budget, there or thereabouts. Okay, now that tells me that the scrutiny process that was undertaken 12 months ago into the bin changes and the waste changes, but then also into the budget setting, wasn't good enough. So you cannot be in a situation where the council is overspending. And, I wasn't on the council, right? So it will sound like hindsight. It did not take a genius to work out that this system was going to be slower, require more lorries, more staff and more fuel. I read the first leaflet that came through and concluded that within about 30 seconds. So how we ended up in a situation like we did, and where we're sat here now with a 10% overspending our revenue budget, that cannot be allowed to happen again. Right? Everyone accepts that there may be slippage. Everyone accepts that there might be the odd forecast out. You cannot be out to the tune of £2.5 million. So I think we have to be really, really clear when we are setting the budget this year. I think Mr Wilson has circulated via email that there are budget training sessions coming up in the not too distant future. Members should be attending them. Members should be asking questions. The scrutiny process, ONS are meeting on Wednesday. We've got more planned for the budget in January and February. People need to get along to them and they need to really understand it, because the thing I hear from the Leader of the Opposition is he almost doesn't understand how the budget is put together, because you wouldn't be then saying some of the things you're saying. So that is alarming that we're in that position, and it cannot be allowed to happen again. We can't sit here in a year's time and be 10% overspent. Having said all of that, this report is for noting, and I'm going to suggest it has been noted. In which case, the next one is agenda item 9, which is the grounds maintenance service future options. Councillor McGarren.
Thanks very much. And I will start with a couple of thank yous, actually. First of all, thanks, he's not here tonight because he's not part of the Cabinet yet, but I'm sure he will be in the fullness of time. Thanks to Councillor Ben Westwick and the Task and Finish group for the very helpful work that they carried out, overseen by the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, obviously, which was extremely helpful. Great minds appear to think alike. Thank you, James Hendry and his team, as usual, for the very extensive report covering the history of arrangements and available options. Some key changes have already been delivered, including much greater flexibility, but that's just the start, because clearly a lot more needs to be done. And I think as councillors, in terms of our mailboxes, we all know that and experience that. So there's 3 options for consideration going forward. A service cost contract with a third party, as in what we've got at the moment. In-house via a local authority trading company, or option 3, in-house via direct service organisation, DSO. Interestingly, and I was delighted when I saw this, the costs of them come out as follows. A service cost contract, £1.09 per pound. Option 2, £1.12, and option 3, £1.06. So actually, on the work that's been done thus far, and there's more to be done, it looks like, it clearly looks like the in-house direct service organisation option is the most economically preferable. Now, not only is it the most economically preferable, I think in terms of what this administration stands for, it is the most preferable. What our residents want, it's the most preferable, and in terms of what I think councillors across the chamber generally want, it's the most preferable. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to be done. We need to make sure that the economics are absolutely bang on and that there are no risk elements we're not seeing at the moment. And full financial evaluation and checks need to take place. As the leader has alluded to previously, this administration, unlike the previous one, is all about financial prudence, and we will make sure that everything is done in order to ensure that whatever system we introduce works best for our residents. But I'm delighted to say it looks like, subject to all the necessary checks, that in-house via direct service organisation is the way forward.
Thank you, Councillor McGarren. Councillor McGeorge.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'd just like to echo Councillor McGovern's thanks to everyone who has worked on this report in the Task and Finish group. This is behind the bins, the number 2 complaint that I'm getting from residents, the grass not being cut, the hedges not being cut. And I was working from home one day, not too long ago, and I was watching the ID Verdi do their winter prune out my kitchen window. I text Councillor Smith a picture. There are hedges that haven't been cut. There was no PPE being worn. These are people that are our service providers that are supposed to be doing a job safely and properly. I really welcome the idea that we can bring this back in-house, subject to looking into this financially. And I feel that it makes a much more unified approach to everything that we're doing around the borough, and we can actually make sure things are being completed properly.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. With the glorious word that should be uttered across the borough soon, Baz exit, I think it makes sense to bring this service in-house, because if we sign a contract with a commercial company, we don't know the date of unitary status, and is it going to cost taxpayer money to buy off a company whoever we merge with and all that complications. And when it comes to grass cutting and hedge trimming, there isn't that many technical machines out there. So there isn't a lot of capital outlay. And the worst training you need really is obviously to operate a tractor, the health and safety around lawnmower and other petrol powered equipment, and obviously the weed spray certificate. I think it's a very easy service to bring back in-house. And as Councillor McGeorge said, people look out their window. If you ain't seeing him rolling through the lovely green fields, one of those pathogen bags, is it blue or white? Or both? So it would be nice if we got the grass looking tidy. I mean, the field at the back of my house, I only cut one half. My ginger cat Alf loved it in August. The grass was so high, and when he's ginger, he thinks he's out in the savannah. His wildness is coming out. Little birds are on the trees. The poor little sod was well upset when they cut it. I was just sort of getting all the grass fur stuff out of his fur. So yeah, please go bring it in house. Let's get that grass cut. And Alf will have to get used to attacking Councillor Brown when he's bored. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I would just echo those comments that I think if we end up in that in-house scenario, obviously it will help with BAS exit and those negotiations, but it would also mean that there's greater flexibility in the service to be able to respond when residents are looking to the council to deliver some services, and it might also be that we can work with our towns and parish councils as well to take on some of the stuff that they're doing in their areas and be more flexible and offer better value for money as well as we do that. Does the Leader of the Opposition have anything on this? Councillor Bagger?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. A number of things, actually, and I'm genuinely trying not to be political when I say this. You can have your political attacks if you want, but this is a genuine desire to do what's right for residents across the borough. This is something that we initiated, as the report shows. The draft was first done in February 2024, so it was something that was key on our radar that needs to be done. But the most important, the two things that concern me, I think, is one, the rush to necessarily have it in-house. I mean, we used to have it in-house the same way as once upon a time we used to have highways within Basildon Council. The thing with bringing something in-house is it's an appreciation, and I appreciate I'm teaching to suck eggs probably, of the fact there is additional salary cost, additional revenue cost, additional cost into the pension, all the sort of things which actually start to act as a drag on council resources. And it's whether or not, again, whether those council resources being in-house are better off than actually being external. But more importantly, it's what's missing from here to an extent, and it's something that successive administrations, when they reviewed this budget, seem to have not addressed. I don't think by anything overt, but it's more by just the fact that even though the public talk about it, the costs probably outweigh it. And that is the fact that from the public's point of view, I'm reminded to remember when I was first elected back in 2006, walking along through Pitsea one afternoon, and a number of people, and Councillor Callaghan knows because he represented Pitsea North West, and they're very proud people there. They really take pride in their houses, their environment, and there are a couple of ladies that actually swept up their yards. And they stopped me and they said, there's no point us doing this because the grass cutting is coming tomorrow, and they don't pick up the grass cuttings, they just leave it, and it just all flies back into our gardens, into our yards, into our houses. And I raised that at the time with officers and asked why it was, as a councillor of 2 years, why it was that we didn't pick up the grass cuttings. And the answer I was given at that time was it was health and safety. They couldn't possibly do it. And I thought, well, health and safety, that's bonkers. And as it transpires over time, the reason we don't actually collect the grass cuttings, apparently now, is because there is an additional cost levied by contractors to actually pick up those grass cuttings. But again, technology has moved on. And it can't be beyond the realm of man for people to have machines which are able to collect these grass cuttings and then dispose of them. And that's something that I don't see, or I've looked for in the report, a recognition that this is something that makes a real difference to residents' lives. Because you can have all the grass cut in the world, but if those grass cuttings are then blowing around in people's houses, we're actually defeating the object. And I'd just like, in the spirit of, as I say, not being political, but just to make sure that we try to actually address that particular issue for residents. Thank you.
First off, I'd like to say, Councillor Bagger, I don't mind you being political, it's fine, it's cool, don't worry about it. Again, you said you initiated this process. technically that's true. You initiated a process, but again, in a hallmark of your administration, you didn't see it through. You didn't deliver on it. You just started a process, but you didn't actually deliver on it. You said something about there's no rush. We're not rushing. This will take 2 years. And again, I'd like it to be quicker, but it's not viable for it to be quicker. It takes that amount of time. We need to make sure we're getting it right. We need to make sure the economics completely add up. But the cost, and you've seen the report, the cost at the moment indicate it works. A lot of work has already been carried out. It's not a back of a fag packet job. A lot of work has been carried out into the actual cost basis of this, and the indications are that it makes sense to bring it in-house. The world's changed, We're not in the same situation we were when the vogue was to contract everything out. I just find it interestingly, you're talking disparagingly about a contract, with some legitimacy, but a contract that your administration signed up to. So what were you doing about it? What were you doing about the grass cuttings issue? So again, it's now our fault that people don't like grass cuttings blowing about, but what did you actually do about it? And again, there's just inertia on inertia on inertia. But like I say, I'm very proud and to be saying that what the preferred option is. It makes a lot of sense, economic and general. And what it does as well is, if it's our own people doing this job, there's a degree of pride in what they're doing. There's a degree of responsibility, which isn't always, and again, I'm not disparaging people who work for ID Verdi or anyone else, but, we know we get better results from our own people, and they feel a connection with the residents that isn't always the case other times. I'm not sure, sorry, when I did my initial thing, I didn't ask James if there was anything he felt he needed to add, but if he does, please do.
Thank you, Councillor. So obviously through the work for the Task and Finish group, a number of questions were asked around different ways of delivering the service, including recovery of grass post-cutting as well. So there were a number of different ways that the service could be delivered, and different levels and tiers of service were discussed as part of that Task and Finish group, the report which was fed back to Overview and Scrutiny Commission in late October.
Thank you. Just before I bring Councillor Smith in, just on that point about grass cuttings, I do think it is something that we do have to look at. I know in my own ward, ever since the Tories introduced the grass tax, what we've then started to see is people coming out of their front gardens and tipping their grass cuttings onto communal grass areas, because they know that if the council can do it, then why pay the 50 quid? And we've seen that a number of times as we've been out and about delivering leaflets and everything else. So it is something that I think we need to address going forward. There's also that perverse issue of some people who live where trees and leaves fall during the autumn, and it falls into their gardens, and then they are being charged to take away the leaves that don't even belong to them. But again, these are nuances that Councillor McGowan will take on board as we work through this contract. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the grass is cut regular, so when you've had no mow May and you cut the grass, the Leader of the Opposition makes a point. But the whole purpose of this is to make sure the grass is cut on a regular basis, so they don't get these big clumps of grass. Now, without trying to bore people with science, nitrogen is the main fertiliser for grass, but the soil doesn't hold it. It's carried with the water. If it seeps through this water system, it gets into rivers, it creates water pollution, it kills off fish, you get algae, etc., etc. So when the grass is cut at a regular length and it's left in place, it slowly decays, the grass growing gets the nitrogen from those clippings, so we don't have to spend money on paying someone with a tractor and a fertiliser sprayer, and we don't have to pay for that nitrogen. And if you went along that basis, you'd have to seal off parks for a short period of time to let that nitrogen fertiliser get into the soil, and because it's chemically based, as soon as it rains it would just wash into the soil table, as I said a moment earlier. With grass clippings, they slowly break down, that nitrogen's released at a nice slow rate. so it keeps our rivers cleaner, our water systems cleaner, support aquatic life. Would you want to be, I mean, imagine if you was adding chemical fertilisers to Gloucester Park. We have fishes in the lake there, Northlands Park. So you'd be creating more algae growth and a vicious cycle. So, yeah, I appreciate what the Leader of the Opposition made with his comments about grass clippings, but if we cut it regular and it's fine clippings, it's a cheap way of feeding the grass in a very sensible way that's good to our waterways and rivers.
Is that still on? I cannot be the only councillor that says, Councillor Smith, you blow my mind. You really do. That was not what I was expecting you to say, but I was captivated nonetheless. I really was. On that positive and extremely informative note, we hand over to Councillor Yacoub.
Yeah, just on this, I think we as an administration really want to look forward, because we're doing really amazing things and we want to be positive about what we're doing. But then we have cabinet meetings like this where Councillor Baggott comes along and tries to kind of rehash history, and then we have to set the record straight. So in the summer of 2022, we had a huge problem across the borough where the grass simply wasn't being cut. And at the time, the number one complaint any resident will talk to you about was the fact that the grass wasn't getting cut. Everywhere looked like a complete mess. It was really hot. People wanted to go out. They wanted to enjoy the summer weather. And all they could see is that their neighbourhoods and the spaces in which they lived just looked completely rubbish. And that was because ID Verdi had failed in providing the level of service that this borough deserves. And at the back of that, you're right, Councillor Baggott, a report was produced. And we consistently, since 2022, the Labour Group's position was that we believe that this is something that should come in-house and we should be able to deliver this service in-house. And we wanted that to be an option when we look at all options. And the report that was produced by yourselves and your administration actually presented the in-house option as the most expensive. And so the truth is that you've been against the in-house option since 2022, and now you've come here to kind of give lessons, whereas you've done nothing. At the start of this administration, we set up a task and finish group, and now we're making recommendations, looking at the finances, and then we're going to be bringing a report forward to actually implement it. So like everything, whether it comes to regeneration, whether it comes to temporary accommodation, whether it comes to the waste system, in every scenario, you sit there and look at the problem, and we come here and we fix it.
And on that note, page 52 has the recommendations. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Agenda item 10, the one you have all been waiting for, the waste strategy. Councillor McGowan.
I actually don't need to say very much tonight on this, because I think this has been well visited many times and the arguments made by many people. Not that there needs to be much of an argument about it. When we were elected in May, we said we would fix the bins, and tonight I can announce what residents have been waiting for. We are going back to weekly black collections. And let's not forget that only 8.1% of residents that took part in the consultation didn't agree with the sentiment of returning to weekly collections. So talking about thumping majorities, that's pretty overwhelming. And just to be clear, 73.2% actually actively supported it. Now, having said that, I have to be very careful, or Mr. Hendry will tell me off. We have to, of course, deliver a balanced budget. And as the leader has outlined earlier, that is more of a challenge than we would like it to be for reasons that he's already outlined. Having said that, and as I mentioned earlier, this administration is all about financial prudence. It's at the heart of everything that this administration does and wants to do. And I have no doubt whatsoever we will deliver a balanced budget. And on the back of that, in spring of 2025, we will go back to weekly black collections. And I'd just like to make it very clear my gratitude to James Hendry and his team, who've worked like Trojans, because this is literally the quickest it could be done, which sure Councillor Baggett appreciates, having lived through his own experience of changing the waste collection system. It couldn't have been done quicker. We're going as fast as we can, and I thank residents for the patience, but we said we'd do it. We're doing it. We're fixing the bins. We've already announced what's happening with the blue and white sacks. They're being binned. We're bringing back blue and white. We're introducing blue and white bags, disposable bags, and now we are moving very swiftly towards weekly black collections, which is what the residents have demanded.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan. Mr. Hendry, is there anything you want to add?
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, for the purposes, the delivery report is indicative and is subject to normal operational delivery programs, but it gives you an idea of the kind of the high-level steps that the operational delivery team need to go through in order to deliver a weekly residual waste collection service. That's included in enclosure 1.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hendry. Cabinet, Councillor McGeorge.
Thank you very much. Everyone said we wouldn't do it. We've done it. There's not really much more to say on that one.
Thanks, Mal.
King of the bins. Any other Cabinet member? At which point, Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Baggett, and you can congratulate us.
Thank you, Chairman. Do you know, you stole the words out of my head. I respect and acknowledge what Councillor McGowan has said, and now that he's got to grips with it, he realises how difficult it is. The evidence of that is, of course, that he's gone for the second least popular option, not the one that the residents want, but the second least popular as an option with regards to what the waste is going to look like from a residual waste point of view. It's also interesting that you are, in the interim, going to be buying additional bags at an additional cost. But more telling, really, is the comment, and Councillor Smith raised it, I think it was Councillor Smith, that it's based and predicated on a balanced budget. So what that means is you're acknowledging that you've got to find the money from somewhere. You've got to work out, in order to deliver on the promise for weekly black sacks, or weekly wheelie bins, or weekly residual waste, that you're going to have to actually look at your budget, what services you might need to cut, what you might need to trim, what you might need to do in order to deliver that. Something that we were aware of, in addition, when we were actually putting together the whole waste programme and the, at the time, biggest change to waste in this borough for over 20 years. Something that people forget was actually led by government initiatives and government directives as to what they expected from waste and recycling, and also predicated on the fact that the public wanted to recycle. So yes, congratulations to Councillor McGurran. I think he's realising how difficult the whole waste issue is in its totality, and I do wish him the very, very best and hope that come the budget, I think that's the very next council meeting we have. I don't think we're having council meetings much anymore, but when we do get to the budget council meeting, I look forward to seeing how this is going to be funded. Thank you.
Councillor McGowan.
It's funny, isn't it? You're approaching your 62nd birthday and you still patronise like that. It's quite extraordinary. Thank you, Councillor Baggett, for that. Yeah, so you said it was the second most popular option. Can I help you out? Sorry? Yeah, I think you're talking about the wrong thing. I mean, not unusual, I know, but you are. Because in terms of what we're talking about here, the black weekly wheeled bin collections, it's massively the most popular option. Again, look at the report if you haven't already, because there is no dispute, there is no doubt about that. As I said, only 8.1% didn't agree with it. They either, I can't remember the figure, 73% agreed with it, 8% weren't that bothered either way. I nearly said something else, but I didn't, so I'm learning. So I don't know really what your point there is. This is a massively popular measure. There's no getting away from that. You're talking about a balanced budget. Councillor Baggett, don't worry about it. We'll fix that. We're fixing the bins. We'll fix your budget deficit issue as well. We'll sort it. Don't worry about it. You said you were aware of the challenges in introducing a new waste system. You may have been aware of the challenges, but you got it spectacularly wrong. And yet again, you're digging yourself further in and further in. Just honestly move on. find some other issue, because this one ain't working for you. It is not working for you in a million years. Right. So when you're talking about the least popular option, I think what you're talking about is the blue and white sacks. So if I can you know, hopefully interpret what you are saying. As we've said before, the aim was to move towards a wheelie bin commingled service, and this was the best option we could do given the financial constraints we face at the moment. However, we may have to revisit that, and I'm telling you, I'm being straight about it now, because again, I'm sure you've all over the government advice on this issue. The government advice on this issue is, no, you can't go to commingling unless you've got a massively strong argument in favour. Now, given we've already gone away from commingling, because your administration did that, I don't see how, in a million years, we can put that argument together. So it looks like the blue and white bags is the only practical option we've got, right? It looks like it's the only practical option we've got, and it saves money, something obviously you wouldn't know much about, and I appreciate that. So, you know, I don't hold that against you. You talk about the recycling rates all the time, right? The recycling rates, there has been an improvement, not denying that, not denying that. But it's not a steady upward trajectory. It spikes, it falls, it spikes, it falls. There's different things going on. And, right, so the report says there is a risk of us meeting the 55% recycling rate by 2025 and the 65% by 2035. There's a risk. Now, where I would slightly take issue with that is I don't think it's a massive risk, and if we miss it, I don't think we'll miss it by much. But because what we're going to do is we've now got credit, we will have credit in the bank with our residents because we're giving them a system that they want and that they understand. And you know what? With a bit of education and you know, a bit of an effective communications, I actually think we can do better than perhaps the report suggests in that respect. But you know what? Even if there is some slight slippage in the recycling rates, that the one thing you can cling to is that's still preferable. That's still massively preferable on the part of our residents to our estates looking like something from the third world, right? Which is what was the situation, what they looked like because of your and Councillor Blake's waste system. So if we're not in the top 30 for delivering the recycling rates, but we slip a tiny bit, but our estates look decent, our residents are not ashamed of where they live, but get a bit of pride back in where they live, you know what? I can live with that.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Local authorities were formed to protect the public health. Fortnightly bin collections do not support that objective. Weekly bin collections support the public health. Every household is different. If someone's providing adult social care to a member of their family, they are going to fill up wheelie bins. One of my constituents has 3 wheelie bins because there is a disabled resident in that house. So this weekly measure will mean they're not having to phone up and say to the council, can you help me because I'm going to have a few black sacks over. It's less embarrassing. One of my neighbours has drilled in the lid a hole to drop a chain and padlock in because they're in terrace. And where people fly, you know where I live, where people fly tip, I was getting the ump if people come along going, I'll put my rubbish in his bin. And you, as Councillor McGovern said, you go around the estates, the fly tipping. It's terrible, terrible. I've never seen it so bad since we poked around the bins. This is what the people want, a weekly bin service. That's it, full stop. Put their dirty stuff out. And I've spoken to a number of residents about the disposable bags. They think it's great, nice and hygienic. They can do it in their kitchen. It's tidy, it's clean. And when residents are looking forward to those new bags, and I think, Mr. Chairman, Councillor McGovern's missed that one thing. 2 things, actually. The very successful crunch. Well, I think you had the same problem as my mother, Councillor McGovern, from when you said your 62nd birthday, a St Patrick's Day party child. But those of us of Irish stock will know exactly what that means. But the two things you missed out on to get our streets clean was the very successful crunch, and credit to the Billericay Area Committee, they decided to buy into that with £1,500 of their area committee that you kindly give out of their budget to them. And they wanted to get them bold because they knew the crunches were so important. And it's good to see people in Billericay getting behind that as well. That's good to see. But the second thing Councillor McGovern's failed to mention, because he's got a lot, was instead of people who pay for their green waste having to miss 6 weeks when the oak leaves are just starting to fall. Well, it's important to remember because the oak leaves are falling now. They won't be getting 6 weeks over Christmas where there's no leaves being picked up. It's only 3 weeks, and I believe it's Christmas week, the week leading up to New Year's Eve, and the week after New Year's Eve. So there won't be residents, as you said earlier, Mr. Chairman, grabbing those leaves and going, their council leaves on my land. They can go back on their land and be swept up elsewhere. So this is about why local authorities were formed, to protect the public health. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor McGeorge, you want to come in? Okay, all right. The point I would just raise on this is I'd go back to the AGM when I raised the point at the AGM of the nurse who told us that repeatedly on the doorstep, broke down crying because she felt as though the way in which the black bin system was operating was treating her and her neighbours like second-class citizens. Lots of us, of all different political parties, right? We pound the streets of this borough on an annual basis, going from door to door, from ward to ward. I'd never seen anything like it in the borough in the lead up to May. I mean, it was literally 70, 80 black bags piled high on street corners that had not been collected for weeks and months at the end. And I agree entirely with Councillor Smith. People are paying the highest level of council tax in history. They should get a basic service, which for me is a weekly black bin collection. And I know that's not in vogue, and when you look at the chart of all of our neighbouring authorities, it's not necessarily in vogue. I think that's something that in Basildon we had always kept, and we should have been proud to keep, and we should never have relented on it. I faced pressure from former directors and chief execs of the council when I've led the council previously. I never ever relented on it. And I don't think that the previous leader should have done that, and I think we should have been really clear that it was a red line for us. The idea that this was all forced on us because of legislative changes, again, I've covered this previously. The Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak made a song and dance about the fact that this was not to happen. He did not want 6 or 7 bins to happen, and yet we ploughed on and delivered 6 and 7 bins to people. So that is a complete nonsense. I think the point has been raised around. We've now had 6 crunches in our towns since the election in May. The tonnage that we've collected is incredible. And when you talk to the refuse guys who were down there on the days of the crunches, they'll tell you if we didn't do this, this would be fly tipped, and we would end up having to go and pick this up. So it has undoubtedly helped. It's not the only answer. And in 2025, bringing the crunches back, hopefully that will help go forward a bit more. I remember reading in Councillor Schrader's blog that I got sent just before the election, which was a riveting read. I learnt things about myself I didn't know in that blog. And my views on the elderly, apparently. But there was lots in that. But one of the things that he said was that it was impossible for the council to go to weekly black bin collections. Politics is about priorities. And you'll see in the budget, we've been very, very clear when we're setting this budget that fixing the bins is the #1 priority of the administration, that we have to fix the bins, and therefore we're bringing this forward. I think we do need to do a piece on education as part of the rollout of the new system. A new system is actually going to be cheaper, as Councillor McGovern said, than the current system. I also think we need to think about in 2025, now we're going to equip people with the actual tools necessary to do the job. We have to look at enforcement. and we've got to think about how we take enforcement to another level. We haven't been able to do that on a sufficient scale because we simply haven't given people the tools to be able to deal with their waste properly. But we're dealing with that in the new year. And hopefully what Councillor McGurran said at the very beginning of his reply to the Leader of the Opposition, I think is true. The damage that the bin system did to the reputation of this council it comes out. We see it every single day in what people send us on our mailboxes. We've got to repair that, and going back to weekly bin collections, and actually something rare in politics, having politicians deliver on their promises. That is what we are going to have done here, and I think that will help to restore that trust and confidence the public has in its council. So the recommendation is on page 132. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 11 is also Councillor McGurran, and this is car parking.
You'll be pleased to know it may be a hat trick from me, but this is the final one for me for the evening, so that's good news all round. Yeah, again, it's all in the report, so I don't need to speak for too long, fortunately. The present system around car parking is confusing for residents and can inadvertently create problems like commuters exploiting all-day free parking within countryside car parks, for instance, which can be an issue. Other issues that we have, high street car parks also being used by commuters rather than shoppers, which is not ideal. Inconsistent charging rates, park resources being used to maintain the car parks and not the parks themselves in some instances. So basically what we've got here is an extensive review which will include, but not just be limited to, the review of fees and charges, amending or removing some concessionary elements, and possible introduction of new charges and restrictions. And I'll leave it at that, but I'm happy to answer questions. And again, if James Henry needs to come in, he is more than welcome to.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request from me with my county hat on. I have been practising, and I will keep practising. When we get Baz Exit, the South Essex Parking Partnership, I'm going to give them their best ever trump. You're fired. They are the quango that loves to say no. Now, these shops pay us lots of business rates. I refer to the Great Berry Shopping Parade and the Triangle Shopping Parade. And we're getting commuters and at Great Berry teaching staff. They are taking up parking spaces. There is an hairdresser there that clients are having to miss appointments. There is the GP surgery there, the chemists, vital parts of the community. And it isn't the parents of Great Berry, it's some of the teaching staff. And I've popped there each day this week because I've had more fresh complaints. And you can see the same cars parked there. And these, as I say, these businesses are paying business rates. I asked as a county councillor to the South Essex Parking Partnership, the car parks we own the land. Could we have 3 hours no return so the customers can say, go into the hairdresser, have all the hair thing done. I mean, us chaps, what is it, 10 minutes? But the ladies, if you look at Councillor McGeorge's hairstyle, you know, that would have that possibly could have been 3 hours work, yeah.
It was actually.
See, there we go. See, I'm validated. But just 3 hours no return parking, not to charge. But if someone wants to think they can park there all day, either get the bus up to Langdon Station or think, what the hell, I'm going to park there. And those businesses that pay business rates to us, employ our local people, lose customers. It's the South Essex Parking Partnership are not playing ball with our business and residents. So please, Mr. Chairman, with those two car parks, we need 3 hours, free parking and no return for 3 hours. That's fair to our business and fair to our residents. And if people want to take the business of biscuit and park there all day and go to the station or to school and teach there all day, that's our bun. That is there for business and resident use.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any other Cabinet member? Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Smith made a very good point there. And you yourself, Chairman, in a previous item, mentioned about the importance of scrutiny. I was quite surprised that you felt scrutiny was so important, given that one of your scrutiny committees hasn't met in 7 months. But here we have an item which does require scrutiny, and which lends itself to scrutiny, and yet the whole process actually bypasses scrutiny. So maybe, especially to address Councillor Smith's point, it would be wise for the Cabinet member to consider taking a lot of these options and actually letting scrutiny have a look at it, so that a full and frank and transparent decision-making process can be seen, rather than what looks to be happening, which is that he'll get the information. I'm sure this isn't how it'll work, but he gets the information with the officers, make a decision, it gets pushed through by CMDR, and the public don't really know necessarily what's going on or have the proper consultation that they should have. So it's an opportunity for you to put your money where your mouth is, Chairman, and get a scrutiny process set up that allows this to be looked at in a transparent manner, while also addressing Councillor Smith's point.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Of course, it isn't for the executive to dictate to the scrutiny committee what they do and do not scrutinise. It is for those committee members on overview and scrutiny or any other committees to determine what they want on their work programmes, and then to call cabinet members to come along and to give evidence to their reports and their inquiries. So you have councillors that sit on those committees. I'm sure you in your group meetings have passed that on, and I'm sure you've asked those questions. Get on with it, put it on your work programmes, and Councillor McGovern will be there with bells on. Councillor McGeorge, did you want to come in? Were you just waving at me? Oh, Councillor Cooper, apologies.
Thank you. I'd just like to say half of the members of your scrutiny committee fail to actually turn up to scrutiny committees, and then when they do, they ask questions unrelated to the actual report, which we've seen happen on numerous occasions. One of the things that we've done with scrutiny is we've actually brought strategies and policies before it goes to Cabinet. So we've taken scrutiny very seriously, and we've made ourselves available, Cabinet members and officers, to be able to look at stuff before they go through. This report in front of you has got nothing to do with a CMDR, because it's a report that we're voting on tonight. So I'm sorry, Councillor Baggott, but it just seems to me you haven't done the work that you're supposed to do to even understand what you're talking about.
Not for the first time. Any other moment? Are you waving at me? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't believe they must have cloned Councillor Baggott, because when he was leader, not leader of the opposition, this council was engaged in a very risky process of a taxpayer-funded cinema, and you've seen the emails from outside bodies and their opinions. Asked for it to come to scrutiny, £26.5 million of taxpayers' money, and the chairman of the committee, who was appointed by the former leader at the time, said I couldn't have a scrutiny for that. So, and traffic regulations are put out to public consultation. They put signs on lampposts, adverts in the Echo. Well, every single councillor gets an email, so I'm not sure he makes that argument, but what the leader's opposition is to tackle commuter parking, it needs to come to a scrutiny committee. But if you want to blow £26.5 million on a cinema, oh, fine, don't need to go to a scrutiny committee.
You are quite right, Councillor Smith, to raise the selective nature of Councillor Baggott's argument. The recommendations are on page 145 and 146. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 12 is the Economic Development Policy and Strategy Direction of Travel. Councillor Power.
Thank you, Leader. So tonight we have a report that outlines the key principles for Basildon Borough Council's new economic development strategy. The recommendations tonight is that we approve the continuation on our ambitious plan that will shape the future of our local economy and enhance the quality of life for all of our residents. This is a step forward in how we approach economic growth, sustainability and prosperity alongside our regeneration and adopting a local plan. It is designed to address the challenges we face while seizing the many opportunities that lie ahead, with a strong focus on local economic resilience, skills development and fostering a sense of civic pride. I want to highlight a few points of this report, as at its heart, this strategy is about creating a thriving, inclusive economy, and we'll be supporting our local businesses, attracting inward investment and ensuring that our residents have the skills they need to succeed in a rapidly changing job market. We know that the economic landscape of Basildon is not just about the traditional industries that have served us well in the past. As we look to the future, we must diversify our economy and develop new sectors, particularly focusing on technology and the green industries. Our plan supports the growth of these sectors, focusing on innovation, sustainability and the creation of high-value jobs. By doing so, we will ensure that Basildon remains competitive and continues to attract investment. An important pillar of this strategy is investing in human infrastructure and our people. Through targeted skills development and training, we aim to close the skills gaps in emerging sectors such as digital technology, green energy and advanced manufacturing. This will not only improve productivity, but also help our residents access well-paying, sustainable jobs. We'll be promoting cultural development and supporting the social economy to build community wealth and enhance the social fabric of Basildon. And this is about ensuring that economic growth benefits everyone in our community, creating a more inclusive and cohesive society. We understand we cannot achieve these goals in isolation. To truly succeed, we need to strengthen partnerships, both locally and regionally, with government, businesses, educational institutions and other key stakeholders. And together we will work to attract the funding and resources necessary to drive this strategy forward. So this is a start of a strategy that will deliver meaningful development for the future of Basildon, and it's a vision that will not only create economic opportunities, but also foster a sense of belonging and pride within our borough. So I look forward to continuing to develop this work alongside our team, and thank you for all of their work so far. I don't know if they have anything else they want to add before.
Yeah, Sujan and Sarah, you have sat and listened to a lot of boring conversation tonight, I'm sure. Do you have anything you want to add at this moment in time, Sujan?
No, I think Councillor Power said exactly what we set out to achieve, so thank you. By the way, nothing is boring. It's very interesting to listen.
I agree. You can come again. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not one to blab on people's when we've had phone calls discussing points that come up as fellow cabinet members, you as leader, me as him. But this relates to the work Councillor Power and her team are working on, and this relates to education in the borough. And a lot of children are now slipping through the net, be it truancy or some schools, allegedly looking at the option of, do you want to teach little Tommy at home, go away, you're not on our books. Now, we're not the education authority, we're governed by a group of people who just look at our roads, that's how they look down at us. Can you imagine how they look down on our children? Could you speak to this report about the steps as leader you're dealing with the educational issue, because what Councillor Powers is doing great, but if our kids are slipping through the net, and when you read the report it says one of the poorest areas is Vange, which I cover in my ward partly, and you do as the leader, it's really important to give those kids a start in life with all these new homes that we have to build, so they can get really good jobs paying on building site. But if they don't have that academic education, how are they going to get a job on a building site?
Yeah, so just to come back on that before I bring Councillor Power back, I think you're right. So one of the things that I've done, we're not the education authority yet. We need BAS exit in order to make that happen. But I have made it my priority to try and speak to as many head teachers as possible. So I've visited a few schools in the borough already. I'm due to visit a few more in the coming weeks and months. And one of the things that they have raised me, which I do find alarming, as you've mentioned there, is that we are seeing a large number of students who are claiming that they are going to be home educated and not returning to school. And then the county council is then duty bound to come in and to do checks on whether or not that is happening and the suitability and all the rest of it. Now, I don't know at this point whether or not that is happening. So I am due in January to meet with Tony Ball, Councillor Tony Ball, who is the cabinet member responsible for this at county council, to discuss this exact point. I did receive a letter from Councillor Ball, and I've got to say it read as if there wasn't really any understanding of what was going on in Basildon. Now I'm hoping that was written by an officer and not by Councillor Ball, and that we will have a more productive conversation. But I think that is a major issue, and I think the work that is being done on ED is really important, and this will link into the local plan, and it will link into everything that we're doing. And the particular thing that I think is critical here was when Councillor Powell talked about the developing human infrastructure, because I have been shown some statistics, and I've had a look at it, that if you was to ask our local public and our local population, at the moment, more than 50% of them believe that the local economy is struggling and that it offers few opportunities. and 4 in 10 people do not believe the jobs that are being created here match the skills and qualifications of local people. Now, we know that our not in education, employment and training levels are too high in our borough, and we know that the outcomes in education for the last 25 years have not been where we have wanted them to be. This is a particular problem amongst white working class boys, and we've got to prioritise white working class boys when it comes to this. But we cannot carry on as a council patting ourselves on the back for the fact that every single day this borough of ours generates £6.5 billion to the UK PLC, that we generate £86 million in business rates, that we've got huge businesses, we've got SMEs, we've got all these guys coming to our borough, making this borough their home, when it is evidently not working for local people who live here. And so I am much more interested, when we're talking about economic development, in not finding out how we help businesses get brand new sheds on the A127 or how we support them to find new premises here, there and everywhere. I'm far more interested in how are we going to take a kid from Felmore's and get them a £50,000–60,000 a year job working in one of our businesses here locally. And how are we going to do that 1,000 times over? And that, I think, has to be where we go with this. I said it at full council. The local plan and the regeneration should create jobs for life for Basil and Brickies, Chippies and Sparkies. Right? Over the next 20, 25, 30 years, there should be so much work for people in the trades in this borough that they should have jobs for life, and they should get in well into their 50s happy with the amount of work that is being generated and created here. So, you know, looking at construction academies, all of those things are going to be really, really important for the development of this. And there will be a lot of kids who don't want to go down the academic path and who will be better in the trades and doing the rest of it. But I would also say I was alarmed speaking to some of our head teachers when I asked the question, how many of your kids are going on to university, and the answer was virtually none. That should be an alarm bells for us, because working class kids should still be going to university if they can, and we should still make it an aspiration for people to be able to go to university and to be able to do that. I was the first man in my family to ever go to university. It wouldn't have happened if I had been born 10 years before, and it may not have happened if I'd been born 10 years after. So we've got to change that. Don't get me wrong, tuition fees and all the rest of it is very off-putting. But in the first instance, if we've got kids in our schools who are good enough, they should be going to university. It should be seen as a viable option for them. And I know that there's been work done on bringing Oxford and Cambridge and some of those guys to our local schools. But we need to do some work on that. Any other cabinet member on this point? Did you want to come back on, Councillor Smith?
Just to come back in, obviously, on the point that, yeah, we're not the educational authority, but the team do fantastic work to work with our businesses, raise the profile going into our schools, raising the aspirations. The Basil and Skills Show is the largest we've had. It will be larger next year. Continuing to ensure that young people have access to those high aspirations. And they're local businesses that are going into our schools as well. Through the Basil and Business Leaders Programme, we continuously fly the flag for programmes such as Enterprise Advisors, where they go into schools and help them write their careers plans, where they can deliver their social value on different programmes and sort of showing what is available locally. So alongside all of the work we need to do to obviously raise levels of attendance to schools and working on home education, I think we are really making sure that we're showing what Basildon has to offer for local young people as well, in terms of aspirations, as well as programmes we're working in partnership with Essex County Council, going into primary schools and really showing aspirational jobs and programmes that we can help schools bolster their delivery for those that aren't academic and maybe want to look at other avenues as well. So, yeah, lots of work and lots more to be done in that space.
Thank you. Does the Leader of Opposition, Councillor Bowden?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As some members will know and some may not know, SEATS was set up via the auspices of South Essex councils in order to address what is a very important issue. And I don't think there's anybody around this room that would argue that getting our youth and getting people educated is absolutely the right way to go. Now, SEATS was set up to address this issue by way of having employers who actually know what skills are required, speaking to education in order to get the right courses being taught at the right time so that these gaps could be filled and we could do exactly what you're aspiring to. Now, I know, that Chairman, that you are now Chair of South Essex Councils. Would you like to shed any light as to whether you're saying therefore that SEATS has failed or what it needs to do to improve, or how can we actually build upon the SEATS programme in order to address these important issues.
Thank you, and thank you for your implied congratulations there. I've only been in that role for 7 days, so I'm yet to judge failures and successes when it comes to some of these projects and programmes. I think, I can't remember if you were at the Cabinet meeting, but we have taken a report by Councillor Power on seats and on what needs to happen. My view, I go back to it, I was the person who, at a cellar as then was in 2021, pushed for a university technical college to be coming to Basildon. And we were in discussions with Ford Motors about that. It got watered down into the version of seats when I left here that you passed, and it's predicated on use of the apprenticeship levy, as opposed to it being something that employers can come and pay for out of their own pocket. They utilise the apprenticeship levy. I think I've said it both to seats prior to becoming the chair of SEC, and I would say it again. I think that there at the moment, it's very difficult to see what seats are selling. So if you are a business in this borough or across South Essex, I think it is very, very difficult. I don't understand their value proposition. I don't understand what they're marketing. I don't understand how I would go and access it. I don't understand how I'd go and give them my money. You're a business success guru. That's a problem if you don't know how you can get people's money off them. So I think there needs to be an online digital platform to be able to address some of this. I think they need to spend some time, money and effort on their marketing and their PR. It feels to me they need a public relations strategy. And I think that they then need to figure out how they become more than just an arm of Ford Motors, which is what it currently is at the moment. So I don't think it is the be-all and end-all. I personally believe that what we should end up with, and I want it to be here in Basildon, is a cluster of further education providers, whether that is colleges, universities, whatever it might be, in the town centre. We are actively discussing and talking to some of them at the moment about coming and making Basildon their home with some of the premises that we own here in our town centre. But in terms of seats, my assessment, albeit 7 days in as chair, but in the 4 months that I've been back, or 5 months, whatever it is, back as leader, is that they have got some serious work to do in order to deliver on the promises that have been made to the board and to South Essex as a whole. Does anyone else have anything on this? No. In which case, the recommendations are on page 149. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you to our officers. If you haven't got any more reports, you don't have to sit here all night, by the way. You can leave. Yeah. You can depart. Yeah. Thank you. Right, agenda item 13 is the Noak Bridge Parish Council's Regulation 16 Neighbourhood Plan Public Consultation. Councillor Adele Brown is not here this evening. I would give it a go, but that probably wouldn't be wise, so I'm going to hand over to Miss Lyons.
Thank you very much. Where we are today is that one of the benefits of the Localism Act in 2011, there weren't many benefits, but one of the benefits is that it brought in neighbourhood planning, which I think is a benefit to all local residents. It allows communities to develop planning policies that become part of the statutory development plan for their area. A neighbourhood plan should set out visions for the future and can be a detailed or in general a document depending on what the local people want. So where Noak Bridge are at the moment is their plan is quite advanced. They originally adopted the locality, the designation in 2018, and we're now at a purpose where they have a plan that needs to go out for consultation, which is all really good. The purpose of the report is to seek approval of Cabinet that we can move this onto full council to allow the Noak Bridge draft neighbourhood plan to be set to consultation next year, and basically that also agrees that I've got the authority to then move this into examination, appoint an examiner to review it, and then hopefully we can get a position following that report. We get the local plan adopted for the neighbourhood area. So that's basically in a nutshell.
Thank you, Miss Lyons. Does any member of the Cabinet wish to comment on this? No? Oh, Councillor Smith.
Mr. Chairman, it's a whole page, it's 2 pages worth. You would assume I would instantly jump at, and I refer to members to pages 339 and 331. I might slightly be going off piece, but relevant to this item. Wasn't we told in 2019 that Brexit would be done and there would be this bonfire of EU regulations? And if members read these pages, the previous government that promised so much to the people who voted to leave, and we just see directive after directive after directive after directive, more directives, some EU laws, names rechanged, rehashed, and more EU obligations. I just thought I'd start off by pointing that one out, because some people say to me, oh no, us Conservatives have got Brexit done, and I say, no, you haven't. But as you know, my views on Brexit, I'm very strong for Brexit, but any opportunity to bring this up, it would be remiss of me not to in this biggest exercise of public democracy. I shall move on. I've made the point there surgically. But I think, in fairness, it is fair to thank the members of Notebridge Parish Council behind me, Councillor Terry Sargent, who's also a member of Notebridge Parish Council. I think she's the chair of the Parish Council. Parish Council members are not paid for their work. They work entirely out of pocket. They don't get their money for internet, phone calls or expenses. And they've worked on this very hard and diligently to represent the residents of this village, to have their input into the local plan. So I think it's a fair platform to thank them. We might not always agree with them, but they've done this for the right reasons, and I think it's fair to thank them, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I would echo those comments. I met with a couple of them last Thursday evening at the Meet the Leader event in Billericay, and heard what they had to say, heard their views as well. So I'm grateful to them for the work that they have done and for us getting to the position that we are in now. There are no other further comments from the Cabinet. Does the Leader of Opposition have anything to say? Councillor Baggott.
I do, thank you, Chairman. I've got 6 questions. 5 mainly, I guess, would be to the officer, and 1 is to, well, I guess you, really. Do you want me to do all 6 at once, or do you want me to do them one at a time? Okay, first of all then, in the Cabinet report, it refers to the Neighbourhood Parish Council as a neighbourhood forum. Why is it when the Basildon Council Neighbourhood Plan support policy recognises parish councils as local councils and not forums, is it being misreferred to?
Go a bit slower.
Sorry.
A bit slower so that we can keep up.
Okay. Secondly, the Council Neighbourhood Plan support policy sets out the stages of neighbourhood planning on page 4, stage 4, and that's the submission of the draft neighbourhood plan. The Council informed Notebridge Parish Council that it met the legal requirements and basic conditions when this was submitted in July and again in September. Why is it now only being reported to Cabinet, and why has it got to wait for full Council to be agreed in March 2025, which is an inordinate delay? Why is it not possible for Council to meet to actually discuss this prior to March 2025? Regulation 16 legislation states that when a neighbourhood plan is submitted to the local authority, it must be publicised and consultation done as soon as possible. Why has the neighbourhood plan not been agreed sooner and therefore caused an 8-month delay since first submission? This is the first neighbourhood plan in Basildon to reach the Regulation 16 stage. Submission to the local authority, what reasons are there for not publicising and consulting on the plan when it was submitted and met the basic conditions to allow stage 4 to take place? The residents of Notebridge have worked hard to get the plan to the submission stage. Even the pandemic didn't cause a delay. Will the Council reconsider the timescales and allow January Council to agree the neighbourhood plan? Finally, a more broader point. When Angela Rayner made her statement over the weekend, is this not now a sign that we would be potentially wasting huge amounts of time and resources on producing a local plan, even if it's going to be taken out of our hands and actually handed over effectively to government?
Thank you for those questions. Well written by whoever it was that wrote them. Let me deal with the last 2 because some of that is politics and not for officers. So in terms of what the government announced at the weekend, that they are saying that you very much do need a local plan. So The new powers that they're looking to introduce are for those areas that have local plans. If you don't have them, you need to expedite them and you need to get on with it. Now, obviously, the government doesn't want to spend all of its time sitting there intervening in every single council's planning process. The idea is that councils do what we haven't done here for the last 3 years, and you actually follow planners' advice and you approve things that are recommended for approval. Where you don't and you keep refusing things, or you keep throwing out local plans for no valid reason like you did previously, then you end up in a situation where the government will be coming in and intervening. So as I'm sure you observed at the Meet the Leader event last Thursday, and I'm sure you as a group are observing from the government, we are in a very different world now to where simply withdrawing local plans and not following through with what the government is asking, that is going to lead to intervention. So as in terms of, if Councillor Brown was here, I'm sure she would say the same thing. We have a process, the intervention process that your government set for the council, the timetable that your government set. We have met that by going out to Regulation 18 in November. That closes on the 12th of January. We need more responses in to that. There will be more weight given in Regulation 19 with the changes that Angela Rayner is introducing to those consultation responses and what people are saying. So it really is important that they put forward all of their views in both Regulation 18 and 19. What I would say is, having spoken to a couple of the Notebridge Parish councillors on Thursday, I was not overly aware of the timetabling issues. I am sympathetic to their argument for a January full council meeting, and I'm hoping to be able to make an announcement on that soon. But it is something that I accept. There is a lot of work that has gone into this, and if we don't need to wait till March to do it, then we shouldn't wait till March to do it. So that, you know, we're not trying to delay it or hold it up. That's something that we are open to looking at, and I'm grateful to those parish councillors for bringing that to my attention last Thursday, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to say something more about that in either this week or next week. Ms Lyons, I've covered 2. You've got 4 to go.
On the issue of the forum, I mean, that's what the area is called. It's the Neighbourhood Forum. So, I mean, the parish council are running it, but it's a neighbourhood forum. So I can't comment on the difference between that. In terms of the matters that you raised, I mean, we wrote to Councillor Sargent on the 6th of December. And basically, that's following a number of letters that have been sent to Councillor Sargent on this matter and to the parish. And what that says is, thank you for your email. We apologise for the delay. Please find below our response. Basildon Council received the relevant screening opinion request from the Parish Council on the 20th of June. As it is required by the process, the Council reviewed with consultants, and then it underwent statutory requirements for consultation with Natural England, the Environment Agency and Historic England. Once we received their responses, the final decision was issued to the parish on the 10th of September. It is not possible to formally submit a neighbourhood plan until the HRA and the SE process is undertaken. As such, this work was not undertaken until September. The plan could not have been submitted until after that, and shortly after it was submitted on the 16th of September. I also understand that the policy team was not made aware of the July submission letter. I have seen correspondence advising me of this. Once the plan documents were received, the Council had to review the submission and get it added to the work plan for permission to consult. Due to the competing priorities of the local plan, there is opportunity, bearing in mind the lead-in times for Cabinet and full Council. The dates were provided. Whilst we would very much wish to see the earliest date possible for the consideration, it's not in our control, as the leaders just told you. I've looked into the further process of the I've looked further into the HRA process, and I understand that we acknowledge the receipt in June to Bluestone your planning agents, and advise our consultants will be undertaking the review. Then we updated Bluestone in July of the draft opinion to be shared with the statutory consultees, and that included approximate timescales for completion. As such, your planning consultants have been kept in up to date on all matters, though I appreciate they may not have copied you into every email. It is assumed that our team's liaison with your consultants was on your behalf. So that's the position we are with regard to everything that's happened more recently on the neighbourhood plan, and obviously now it's gone to Cabinet, and the way that the matters work in terms of consultation of policies that affect the borough is the fact that has, from a planning perspective, they have to go to full council to allow for that for consultation. And that will, as the leaders just said, we hope we can look at an earlier date than the March date that's been given to you. And also, the issue is that the local plan has taken priority because we were under direction from central government to get that local plan out for consultation in November.
Thank you, Ms Lyons. Any other Cabinet member with any other points? No. In which case, the recommendations are on page 162. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Okay, agenda item 14 is the partnership review, and this one is me. Back in the summer, I asked the council to look at a partnership review, to look at how the council is working with partners, particularly across three areas. The first is in community safety, the second was in economic development, and the third was in health. And I am grateful to Dame Stella Manzi, who conducted that partnership review on behalf of the council, and indeed I think nearly all the members, including Leader of the Opposition and some of our officers, were all involved in that partnership review. The part of that was to look at a range of things really around the measuring the effectiveness and looking at some establishment of clear goals for future collaborations to create a framework. The report talks about where we have strengths, so there is strong collaboration across the council. We've heard some of that tonight in the economic development report, and we have some positive feedback from our partners, but there are challenges, and one of the key ones, which we actually saw in the LGA peer review into our comms, is the same as what we've seen in terms of our partnership review, which is that there is very limited member involvement in what we do here as a council. This has been far too much officer-led. It needs to have more member involvement so that the strategic alignment and resource alignment between what the council is doing and what the political priorities of the administration are. Now, the report goes into establishing a whole manner of things, frameworks, and a forum to implement the recommendations as outlined in the report. It is a really good piece of work. I encourage people to look through it and to spend some time looking at Dame Stella's report. I think it should capture everything that we in our portfolios have seen thus far and give us a clear way forward so that when we enter into any new partnerships, particularly when we look at taking on partnerships post-BAS exit, that we have a clear framework for how we're going to measure success. Does anybody have any questions on the partnership report? I'm aware the Cabinet all got briefed on this previously. Does the Leader of the Opposition have any questions on this? No, everybody is happy with what I have done. The recommendation then is on page 347. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Agenda item 5 is the exclusion of the public and press in order to protect the council's commercial arm. All those in favour of excluding the public and press, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you. Can I ask that the webcasting be turned off? And thank you to everybody who has tuned in and watched.